Okay, is everyone ready?
Yes, Pak.
Yes, go ahead, Pak.
Hai Tanri.
Oke, selamat sore Bapak Ibu. Selamat sore.
Selamat sore, Pak.
Selamat sore.
Yeah.
Selamat sore.
Okay, so this is the first webinar series that we are going to have, Bapak Ibu. Jadi untuk kali ini topiknya adalah leadership challenges in the era of personalized services and artificial intelligence. Dan pembicaranya teman baik kita, sahabat kita, Profesor Peter Verhezen. Beliau adalah profesor di Antwerp School of Management di University of Antwerp di Belgium. Ya, jadi sebagaimana kita tahu, artificial intelligence sudah menjadi bagian dari keseharian kita selama beberapa tahun terakhir ini ya. Kalau orang berbicara mengenai artificial intelligence, mereka biasanya yang kepikiran di kepala itu adalah robot, gitu ya. Nggak salah juga, tetapi ada banyak sekali hal yang bisa dikategorikan sebagai artificial intelligence yang penggunaannya akan sangat tepat guna bila kita melihat ke depan. Ya, sekarang kalau di Jepang itu sudah berkembang konsep Society 5.0 itu. Excuse me.
Andries cannot hear you.
You cannot hear me. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Pak Andries.
Okay. So
Yes, we can.
Ya, clear. Bisa kedengaran, Pak.
Okay. So just raise your hand if you cannot hear me. So I think.
It's okay.
Okay, saya akan ulangi berarti di Jepang itu sekarang sedang dikembangkan konsep Society 5.0 ya.
Okay.
5.0.
Got you. Hey, Andries.
Hai Pak John, apa kabar?
Hey,
Ya.
Tanri. Hi, good afternoon.
Jadi kedepannya itu artificial intelligence akan sangat memegang peranan yang sangat penting buat kita dalam melakukan kegiatan sehari-hari. Jadi oleh karena itu kita berkesempatan untuk mendengarkan dari Profesor Peter Verhezen mengenai kepemimpinan dan kaitannya dengan artificial intelligence. Tetapi sebelum itu saya ingin memperkenalkan Dr. Tanri Abeng. Beliau adalah founder dan chairman dari ECGL. Beliau yang mendirikan ECGL ini 17 tahun yang lalu bersama dengan bapak-bapak seperti Abu Rizal Bakri dan Bapak Yusuf Kala. Ya, beliau akan sedikit berbicara mengenai leadership, terutama kaitannya dengan setelah masa new normal ini, bagaimana pemikiran-pemikiran tentang leadership ke depannya. Pak Tanri, without further ado, I just give the floor to you. Silakan, Pak.
Okay. Thanks, Andries. Peter, how are you? Welcome back to Indonesia. Well, I think I must appreciate both Peter, Professor Verhezen, and Andries for choosing, I think, is a very timely and I would say a great topics, which is actually leadership in the era of personalized services, artificial intelligence, because now we're moving into technology. But let me just give just a very short introduction before Professor Peter Verhezen is taking over. And that is actually on the true fact of leadership. Jadi fakta daripada kepemimpinan itu, ya. Over my 50 years of professional life, I have concluded that actually sebenarnya any organizations, in fact, or nation state, is just going to be as good as its leader. Jadi organisasi apapun, bahkan sebuah negara bangsa, hanya akan sebaik pemimpinnya. But don't forget, leaders are just as good as the people they choose. They develop, ya. You don't just choose, you develop and empower. Jadi setelah dia choose, they develop, dikembangkan, and later on empower. Because there are leaders who, after choosing people, they don't give them challenge. They don't empower them. So then they work by themselves rather than using the power of his or their team. That is why I emphasize the empowerment. Now, a little bit about leadership in Indonesia. I think there is a tremendous challenge. Ada tantangan yang luar biasa tentang kepemimpinan di Indonesia. That is because the formula of a success leader by choosing and developing and empowering people are not really happening. Just think of after 75 years of independence, ya. Jadi setelah kita merdeka 75 tahun. 75 tahun ya. Belum pernah ada wakil presiden yang betul-betul dirancang, didevelop untuk menjadi presiden. Ya, kalau Anda mengatakan ya Pak Habibie itu adalah wakil presiden kemudian menjadi presiden. It was not designed, it was not planned, it was an accident. Karena Pak Harto harus mengundurkan diri setelah 2 bulan menjadi presiden, wakil Pak Habibie wakil presiden, constitutionally Pak Habibie then became president. But it was not planned. It was not organized. So there was a development, but not by design, but by accident. Ibu Mega juga begitu. She was vice president, and then Gus Dur was unseated, so she became president. So they were never actually planned and developed to be successor of the president, of the leader of the nations. Itu sebabnya mengapa perkembangan dan pembangunan di Indonesia itu tidak sustainable, because there was no succession planning in leadership. Now, this is the same in most of the state-owned enterprises in Indonesia. Pada umumnya, BUMN itu tidak ada succession planning to develop leaders. Ya, tidak ada. Experience saya sebagai komut di Pertamina, after 5 years, there was 3 CEO, 3 presiden direktur. Mestinya kan di-plan at least 5 years and then you have another dirut. Ini 3 tahun itu ada 3 dirut, 5 tahun 3 dirut ditambah 2 pelaksana tugas dirut. So effectively 5 leaders in 5 years. Now cannot walk away. Itu tantangan di Indonesia. Barangkali salah satu BUMN misalnya yang betul-betul sudah memiliki leadership development and planning itu Telkom. I was a chairman, saya komut 7 tahun. And we try to develop that. Di Telkom itu setiap penggantian dirut itu pasti orang dalam yang sudah siap. Nah, begitu juga di Bank Mandiri yang kebetulan saya yang melakukan merger dari 4 bank menjadi Bank Mandiri. Sekarang Bank Mandiri itu paling tidak sudah ada 3 mantan dirut Bank Mandiri yang menjadi anggota kabinet. Ya, jadi ada sekarang ada 2 tuh. Ada 2 wamen, Pak Budi sama Pak Tiko. Nah, sebelumnya itu kan Pak yang pernah jadi Menteri Keuangan, dia adalah yang pertama masuk di situ sesudah Robi Johan. But anyway, when you look at organizations in Indonesia, itu hampir nggak ada yang betul-betul memiliki leadership planning sehingga terjadi suksesi yang terstruktur. So what I have concluded for Indonesia, there is a tremendous need to develop leaders. But these leaders must be able to develop institutions that will institutionalize leadership development. Artinya begini, leaders itu dibangun dalam organisasi yang terstruktur dengan baik. Tetapi to have institutions that is developed and structured, itu membutuhkan leaders. So it's chicken and eggs. So the bottom line is basically leaders develop other leaders. That is why you need leaders. Without leaders, you cannot develop institutions, and without institutions, you cannot develop leaders. But it is the leader who develop the institutions. So bottom line, by mathematical formula, leaders create other leaders. Nah, inilah tantangan di Indonesia. I recognize that when I started to actually establish the Ministry of State-Owned Enterprise. Pada waktu saya membangun Kementerian BUMN tahun 1998 di era krisis. I recognize that. That is why I actually established a foundation, satu yayasan di Kementerian BUMN yang namanya Yayasan Pengembangan Kepemimpinan di BUMN. The Foundation for Leadership Development di BUMN. What happened was when I left the ministry, itu tidak jalan. Because of that, then in 1902, which was 18 years ago, yeah, I established Executive Center for Global Leadership. At the time, we had people like Yusuf Kala, Andries Sibarani, Ponco Sutowo. They were actually business people. So the birth, kelahiran daripada ECGL atau Executive Center for Global Leadership actually arise because of the needs. The needs at the time that I already recognized 20 years ago, that there is a need to develop leaders. So these leaders will be able to develop organizations, and organization will be able to develop leaders. So our challenge is for every one of you who are now leaders or become to be top leaders, the number one task is develop your organization and make a plan for leadership succession. That way, after you leave, you will have a successor. The success of a great leader is actually coming from the fact, berasal dari kenyataan bahwa dia mampu membangun pengganti suksesi. I don't see that success is based on the performance of a few years, beberapa tahun. Success is actually driven by the fact that as a leader, dia telah membangun institusi, dan di dalam institusi lah itu ada sistem yang bisa mengembangkan kepemimpinan. We need a lot more leaders. We have a tremendous need for leaders in the politics, in the government, and in the industry or corporate sectors. So the challenge for us ke depan ini adalah bagaimana kita membangun dan memproduksi pemimpin-pemimpin yang capable. Karena at the end of the day, kembali saya mengatakan, organisasi hanya akan sebaik pemimpinnya. Negara pun hanya akan sebaik pemimpinnya. That is why Peter Drucker mengatakan sebenarnya tidak ada negara miskin terbelakang. Yang adalah negara-negara yang tidak dipimpin dengan baik atau tidak dikelola dengan baik. It's undermanaged. So within that context, I think Peter's topic I think is very timely. The reason being is that there is changes. The new normal, for example, and the birth of technology, intelligent, what we call artificial intelligence, what have you. Nah, ini apa yang akan terjadi? There is a process of change. Ada proses perubahan. And the domain of a leader is managing change. Dia adalah yang harus bertanggung jawab untuk mengelola perubahan. And we are going to continue to face changes. Within that, I think this particular forum is extremely important, sangat penting, and I thank Peter, who has been actually the facilitator for ECGL, or Executive Center for Global Leadership, and a very good friend of us. So again, Peter, thanks for visiting us, even if you are in Belgium, but you gave time for your friends in Indonesia. Jadi selamat berdiskusi. Mudah-mudahan everyone gain something. This is a great thing pada saat pandemi ini karena kita bisa belajar dari jarak jauh. And Andries for organizing this on behalf of Executive Center for Global Leadership, I thank you. Silakan, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Tanri, for a very, very good introduction about ECGL and about leadership itself. Jadi Bapak Ibu, kalau misalnya kita belajar tadi dari penjelasan Pak Tanri, itu ada beberapa BUMN yang succession plan-nya sudah berjalan, misalnya Telkom dan Bank Mandiri. Ya, tetapi saat ini almost none have leadership planning. Itu tadi kata Pak Tanri ya. Jadi so there are tremendous need for leaders development because leaders create leaders. Jadi yang perlu sekarang untuk perusahaan-perusahaan Bapak Ibu, apakah itu swasta, apakah BUMN, atau di kementerian pun, itu develop the organization and have a good succession plan. Yeah, so this is a challenge for us, our country, how to produce capable leaders. Jadi itu mungkin intisari dari apa yang disampaikan oleh Pak Tanri, especially in this difficult time. Yang berubah-ubah dan banyak disruptif seperti pandemi COVID-19. Oke, untuk tidak memperpanjang waktu, saya akan mempersilahkan Pak Peter, Profesor Peter Verhezen. Beliau akan membawakan topik yang tadi seperti saya katakan adalah judulnya Leadership Challenges in the Era of Personalized Service and Artificial Intelligence. Ya, artificial intelligence menjadi household term sekarang ini karena kemajuan teknologi. Tetapi apa yang berubah dari kepemimpinan? Kita perlu belajar ya dari seorang Peter Verhezen yang sudah malang melintang untuk memberikan pelatihan di mana-mana. Dan beliau juga sebenarnya sudah sangat sering ke Indonesia, bahkan bertempat tinggal di Bali ya, Peter sebenarnya karena pandemi beliau tidak bisa pulang ke Bali, beliau terpaksa tinggal di Belgium. Okay, Peter, the floor is yours. I will let you introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Pak Andries, and thank you so much, Pak Tanri. It's a pleasure and honor to be back in Indonesia with my heart, and it never left Indonesia, as you know. I'll try to be back soon when the planes are flying. What I'll do is I'll upload the presentation and hopefully Pak Andries will be able to give you that presentation for those interested. Let me just try to go to this slide, I want to do two things. One is I want to talk about what we call personalized services. And the second part is indeed the leadership challenges, and then I conclude. Now, just give you a little bit of background. I'm kind of a hybrid. For 25 years, I was in business, and I was very fortunate to start up a company in Singapore with a great group of people with an IBM spin-off. And one of the things that I experienced, as Tanri was saying, is that business is always reacting and proacting to change, and crisis, as the Chinese would say, it's an opportunity and it's a threat. And business should try to look at changes as opportunities. And one of the things that we did in the late 90s and 2000, when Tanri was minister, was we were an ICT company that was looking at advanced systems for organizations, and more particularly CRM. And now with IBM, we did other things. But the point was that we continuously had to adapt to these changes. Now, with this COVID crisis and with what we call digital turbulence, where technology becomes more and more crucial in the way we deal with each other, and how business is dealing with customers and other businesses, there is a lot of talk about artificial intelligence. So what we want to do with ECGL as an introduction is, for about 45 minutes, 1 hour, is give you a couple of ideas how business may have to deal with these issues. And so, as Tanri was saying, leaders is about developing institutions, it's about succession planning, it's about developing other leaders. I would even reframe this, and I would say one of the responsibilities of any board, of any CEO, Dirut and Dirigents, is indeed creating and sizing the future. They need to feel what's going on. They need to find, okay, how are we going to deal with this turbulence that we see today, which is quite a bit driven by digitization of our services and our products. So basically, referred to that very famous movie, I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of artificial intelligence, and more particularly about machine learning, which I'll explain briefly. So if we're looking at the next slide, this is indeed about how is artificial intelligence and machine learning changing the way we deal with products and services. And as you can see there, whether in Indonesia with Tokopedia or Labada or Gojek, you just name all those organizations, is changing the way we are living, especially in Corona. If you look to the stock market in the US, Wall Street, NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange, it's basically because of the 5 big tech companies that the stock market is crazy going up. For me, as an economist, I say, my God, what's going on? Because all the other companies, we're suffering. But those online or organizations that providing online service, they seem to be able to thrive. So let's have a look, and this is an important slide, and that's also what Andries and Tanri were referring to. If you're talking about artificial intelligence, it's basically, if I talk about intelligence as a way of fulfilling certain objectives, then artificial intelligence is basically fulfilling certain objectives by computers still managed by humans. And deep learning or machine learning is nothing else as a sub-part of artificial intelligence. And the example that you all are familiar with, which is in fact incredibly important during this COVID crisis, is Netflix. And I'll talk about it in a minute. Netflix or even Uber or Gojek, what it means is you have an application, and underneath that application, you have basically 2 issues, data and networks, which now is on the cloud. It is those 2 that allows computers to be incredibly effective and efficient in particularly offering personalized services. But if you're looking at digitization in general and artificial intelligence in particular, then you can say today that about 52% has to do with automation. And automation indeed is also robotics. But that's only half of the story. The other part of the story is that it's about augmentation of the ability of leaders and managers to use computers to make better decisions and smarter decisions. And that means that 35% is what we call cognitive insights, which means data put into algorithms, which is nothing else as a mathematical equation, statistically proven based on Bayesian statistics. And again, those who will follow ACGL studies will get more out of this. But this kind of Bayesian statistics with data that are on the cloud allows better predictions. And if you can predict better, then of course, then you will be in a better position to invest in resources that will hopefully allow you a more competitive advantage. Example of cognitive insights and predictions. Again, Netflix is one, but if for example, you're using Gojek, you just type in where you are and where you want to go. And within minutes, the system will allow you to pick up or automatically. So basically it's important, there are no humans involved. So that's why, as I will explain very briefly, in these algorithms, it is humans who create it, and they train data, as I will explain, but it is computers who do the whole thing. And so these computers are able to predict more accurately, to find within big data patterns that we humans do not necessarily see. One of the famous studies was at Mount Sinai in New York, where basically, based on radiological screens, the computer was able to find the potential of schizophrenia purely on thousands of data that a specialized doctor did not see coming. So computers are very good if they're well trained with data, and they need a lot of data. And that's something also we'll say. The major difference between a great human brain and a smart computer is that computers are faster, but humans are still superior for reasons that I'll explain. And the third one, 13%, is about cognitive engagement, which means chatbots, your intelligent assistants, even natural languages, so translation. So you see 50% is about automation and 50% is about augmentation of decision power of humans. And that's important for you to understand. So if I look now, Netflix, the example that we spoke of, and you have locals in Indonesia, you have locals all over the world, but Netflix is still the biggest. Why is Netflix so crucially important? Because it shows, as with Google, it is a recommendation engine. So the artificial intelligence behind this company is nothing else as an equation that tells you what customers like. And if you know what customers like, you can predict what they will like. Example, within Netflix, the series The Crown, which was one of the first ones, which is an expensive thing, was made by Netflix. Now you may think Netflix started as a deliverer of video cassettes. Why would they take the risk as a leader to invest millions of dollars in content? The Crown in this particular example. Well, the reason they can do that is because we click yes, we like, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Netflix, they know with all the data that we like certain movies. And based on that, they have run mathematical equations predicting quite accurately what kind of movies people like. So if you talk about blockbusters by Hollywood, well, for any blockbuster, most likely there are 9 failures. Now, what's happening today that Netflix and others are using now artificial intelligence data that we have put in, but huge data, so that they are able, with much less risk, to invest in movies that most likely people will like. And that's incredible competitive advantage for them, okay? So that's one example. Another example is this in Schiphol, a very different example. Philips in Eindhoven, you may be familiar with that, together with General Electric and Osram are the big lighting organizations in the world. They're selling lamps. Now what you do is, as a customer, including an airport like Schiphol, they buying lamps. Okay, no problem. Now things are changing because of the ability of big data and artificial intelligence. Why? Because now Philips has developed a system that will help them to know when the lamps will, at the end of their life, will need to be replaced. And that led Schiphol to renegotiate a deal with Philips. Schiphol has now not a deal, a contract with Philips saying you deliver so many lamps. No, they say you, Philips, deliver light. What the difference is that instead of having one shot, a lamp, now they have per month a deal that they pay in Philips so that Philips is responsible for all the lights you see. What's the difference? That Philips is responsible for the lights and maintaining these lights. And they can do that because they have data on all of these lamps with sensors in those lamps that are connected to the cloud. And the cloud is putting that information on a big database and a computer screen, let's say in Philips Eindhoven, finding out when do we need to maintain and when do we have to replace. That's another example of how an organization like Philips for many, many years was just selling lamps, they're selling light. Another example is this one, which I like, Stitch Fix. This is an American lady from Stanford, and she started a company, very briefly, a company that said, okay, all these ladies who are professionals have no time to shop, especially in the US. In Indonesia, we're lucky because the shops are open until 10. Well, not anymore, I heard, but they're open now until 8. But usually it's 10 o'clock. Now that's not in Europe and US. They're closing at 6, 7 o'clock. So these people have no time to shop. So what she did was, based on big data and based on engaging personal stylists, she came up with the idea, I'm going to sell and predict what ladies like. And so based on an agreement, so you pay $20, you like with Netflix, you pay a subscription fee and you fill in the data, what you like, what's your style, what you like. Based on that, and based on many, many others, similar profiles, she's able now, and her team is able to send a package with 5 items. And usually, initially, the first years, it took her three rounds to get it right. So what you're allowed to do is you pay, let's say per month, $10, $20 or a bit more, and you get a box every month or every 2 months sent with items done by the computer, and you send back what you don't like. Now, because the computer is getting smart with feedback into the system, they get more and more accurate in predicting what these ladies want. And at the end, the box is in 3 rounds, she's able to deliver. So she sent 5 items. And for most of the time now, 85% people will accept it. And the unique thing is that she has also stylists who basically can override the computer and put a personal note so that you feel like it's not the computer delivers you, it's like a personal stylist. That combination is powerful. She was, about 3 years ago, went to the NASDAQ, and it's a 1 billion company in 4 years' time. So that shows you an example of how a young lady just changes the way retail works. Another example of the good is General Electric. Not anymore with lamps now, but with engines. We all know General Electric is, together with Rolls-Royce, is selling those big jet engines for Airbus, Boeing, and other airlines. And that was a contract. Now they don't sell engines. They sell or lease power. Why they can do that? Because in these jet engines, there are sensors now, again, connected to the cloud that are filled into General Electric, and they know exactly when jet engines will need to be maintained. That allows them to get the flights less disrupted, which means it's good for the airlines. And General Electric, of course, is doing anything to maintain and prolong the lifeline of those jet engines and to maintain it accurately so that the flights are always in the air. Unfortunately, with COVID, that's a little bit disrupted. But the idea is, instead of just power, artificial intelligence now, which is the combination, I repeat, of big data with a loop of feedback and network on the cloud often, which provides enormous power of computers to calculate all these things, the Internet of Things, to when this engine needs to be replaced or maintained. And then, of course, there are a few other examples, as you're all aware of, Grab, Gojek versus Uber. Let me go back. So the two major issues of AI is that at the moment, there is a lot of hype around artificial intelligence, and there are a lot of good things happening, the ones I just mentioned. But you need to understand that, like in anything, also artificial intelligence, and I give you a slide in a few minutes, is a little bit overhyped. It cannot do everything. And I keep on saying, and I'm going to be a little bit naughty, basically people say, oh, we should be afraid of artificial intelligence. And I'll give you examples where you should be afraid. Basically, artificial intelligence is a very fast, accurate machine or a dumb computer on steroids. It means computers or this artificial intelligence is meant to do something from an input to an output. And they're very good and very fast and very accurate. But they cannot do anything else. Whether it is winning the chess championship or Go, that play the Chinese game, they're extremely powerful. The best cannot win from them anymore. But you cannot ask the DeepMind AlphaGo, that game, okay? You cannot ask that game, please bring me a coffee. The machine is done, is produced, is made to do a particular issue, okay? And that's where humans, and of course human leaders, are superior. And I'll come back with some neuroscientific ideas that shows that. So the point here is that artificial intelligence really made breakthrough in 2012, 2013, hence why we only talk for the last 5 years about AI. They made a breakthrough by being very, very good in what we call visual recognition and speech recognition. And I'm not going in detail, it's with a Canadian professor, it's called backpropagation, which is a statistical method with feedback that helped the computer to be able to learn under supervised data by itself. And that's why it's called machine learning. And there's no human involvement. Once the machine is being done by human coders and the artificial intelligence researchers, once that machine is going, like with Netflix, it's automatic. And that's the power, of course, because they don't complain. It's 24 hours by 24 hours, 7 days a week. So that's where, of course, business people like that, because once that machine is working, it's working pretty well. So that's the good thing of artificial intelligence. And I just want to touch upon one more thing here. There is a development, especially in China, but also Indonesia, which is called now customer to business, or what we call shoppertainment, which means you have people coming from nowhere that are influencers, quote unquote, that now, and that's our job, on 7 hours a day in China, they are talking to people and they are recommending products, whatever products you can imagine, and they make millions of dollars for those organizations. And together with Alibaba's Taobao, okay, they are basically trying to sell a lot of products. And China is enormous. They have the biggest data on the planet because of the mere numbers, as you can imagine. Indonesia is doing something similar. Labada, Tokopedia are doing similar things, but they're not yet that advanced as Taobao and Alibaba in China. And so is Amazon. Amazon is trying to catch up. But this is a phenomenon that really is peculiar in China. It's called shoppertainment, and it's purely personalized service, meaning you as a customer talking to the host, and the host is interacting with you, and other people see that. And it's been proven that 60% of the people who are attending those chats, like you at the moment, looking at me and Tanri and Andries, that they are 60% of the time are clicking on a product in order to buy it. Now, that is an enormous opportunity for a lot of products, as you can imagine. And that's indeed something that become more and more popular. It's not popular in the US and in Europe yet, although, as I said, Amazon is trying. It's very popular in China, and I think it's getting more popular in Indonesia and other Southeast Asian companies. And here you see it also. So here's Tokopedia, if you see my cursor. Amazon is trying to do something. Lazada is already doing things. And this is the most powerful influencer in China. You click on it, there are some, now if you go to YouTube, we're not going to do it because of time constraints, but if you look at it, it's incredible what this guy does. It's a hard job. And this guy makes, per year, really, he's a millionaire. And he's coming out of nowhere. Just to show you what companies need to deal with, okay? So it's not that straightforward. We all know the stories. As you know, Indonesia, how is Bluebird surviving? And well, now they're lining up with Gojek, isn't it? So the point is, all over the place, taxi companies are disrupted by the Uber phenomena. Whether it's now in Southeast Asia, Grab or Gojek, of course, that doesn't matter. The point is that artificial intelligence and data are behind this phenomena. By the way, Uber made a lot of losses, but they with the taxi or the sharing car business, but they are profitable because they became an online restaurant deliverer during the Corona crisis. So they still make money a little bit, but not because of the Uber that we know, but because of the delivery during this COVID crisis of delivering food from the restaurant or wherever it is to your home, because people do not want to go out and want it all be delivered at home. So this is a phenomena that you see are happening as we speak. Now here, I'm going to talk a little bit more, just briefly, technical. One thing, and I refer to Tanri again, Charles Darwin, the one who came up with the evolution theory, said very clearly, observed that it is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor is it the most intelligent that will survive. It is the one that is most responsive to change that will survive. And that's exactly what this courses that we are developing with Tanri and Andries at ECGL is what we're trying to do. In other words, what I'm trying to say here is, how can a leader and an organization be vigilant and agile enough to see the future and size that future? And of course, digitization in this particular case is incredibly important because it's driving business. Now, here you see for a second at the x-axis the impact in percentage that AI has on business, and then on the x-axis you see there it's in billions. And this is a McKinsey study, and you see very clearly that traveling and travel business is incredibly affected by AI. Today, including myself, we go online. And we basically go and buy tickets. Behind this online ticketing, buying and purchasing, there is an incredible strong AI behind, because they need to know the availability of the seats and so on and so forth, best pricing, and all online and immediately. And so that's that's where AI will play a role. It will play a role in retail, as I just said, not just with C2B business, but even the whole business, like Amazon is getting into retail business, as you know, and not just in books and other stuff. Now they bought Whole Foods, and they have in Seattle, in the area of Seattle in the US, about 26 stores. It's called Amazon Go, which means, again, same thing. If you have an application on your phone, okay, you go walk in Amazon Go, there's no cashier, you pick your stuff, you walk out, and automatically it will be deducted from your card. Now that requires sensors, videos, recognition of that. It requires exactly that it can scan data while you pick it. So it's an incredible advanced system. It's all about recognition, okay? And so Amazon is exploring that, and that will and may change the way we do business and buy stuff. Logistics, of course, automotive, and so on and so forth. Of course, automotive, autonomous driving. Now, again, for those who will ever take the class, we'll explain that autonomous driving cars is nothing else as statistics with a lot of sensors. It's Bayesian statistics of probability calculation, millions of times per minute, which says if then, meaning if a passenger, if a car drives from the left and they want to pass you, what's happening? And so today the technology is good, and Uber and Tesla and Google have proven that, but it's very good on highways. The problem is that they're not good enough yet in small alleys or in small streets. I'll give an example. The computer is good in recognition because it's trained to do so. The problem is, recently there was in Canada an airplane that was landing on an emergency, landing on a highway. Now that's not usual stuff. An autonomous driving car would not recognize that plane. Why? Because there's no data that he would recognize. Because that plane on a highway is not supposed to be there. So it wouldn't recognize it, and it would just keep on driving. Or a horse that's getting over the street. A horse is not supposed to be on the street. Now you drive from Jakarta to Surabaya, and you will see a lot of horses and cows are crossing the street, so you better be careful. So there, autonomous driving will not do the job yet. It's not safe enough. So there's still hurdles to be taken, okay? But the technology is there in principle. Now here is showing you also that competing with a digital operating model, like the ones I've been mentioning, and there are many, is very different from the traditional operating system. Why is it that Nokia lost to iPhone and Samsung Galaxy? Not because Nokia was a bad company. I still remember the days that it had the best smartphones together with BlackBerry. Both BlackBerry and Nokia are nowhere today. Why? Because they didn't have a digital operating model. Again, that's something we'll get in detail during the course. Let me go further with some other ideas. Now, this is another one that I want to share with you. I said to you, artificial intelligence and deep machine learning, which has to do with automating and augmenting decision power of leaders, is basically driven by, I repeat, data and networks. Now, here is an example, it's coming out of the Harvard Business Review, a study that indicated that Uber has a very kind of different network to defend and protect compared that to Airbnb. Now, what's the difference? Airbnb basically is benefiting from more and more data getting into the computer because people traveling and want to go to Bali or Hawaii or Phuket or New York or Paris or Kuala Lumpur. And basically that network is inherently by definition global. Uber has to do the fight city by city. And that's more difficult. And that's why, from a strategic perspective, if you're in business of autonomous, sharing cars or or getting a Uber or a Gojek or a Grab, Grab and Gojek, similarly as Uber, will need to fight every city. Every country is different. Every city is different. Regulation is different. Airbnb has, in that sense, a slightly easier job. Again, you see, it's not just good enough to have data and network. You need to distinguish. And that's the difficulty. It's not because you understand what artificial intelligence is that you will be, by definition, be successful. You need to really probe, trial and error, and see what's going on and what's behind. And that's requiring understanding of not only the technical side of the business, but also, of course, the business side of the business. Now, why then I believe, and it's not me who's inventing this, these are people that are much more savvy in technical issues than me, but why people believe that humans are still superior. Now here, and I'm not going to get too much in detail, but what I want you to be aware of, that this whole issue of artificial intelligence, and more particularly deep learning, and this is exactly what the computer does. Apparently, the way our brains are functioning is in layers. And that was the breakthrough in 2010, 2012, that computer scientists were mimicking the way our brains were working through this layer system with feedbacks. And if you're looking here at the left-hand side down, there is a picture, an image. And the computer, because of the big data, will be able to screen it through the different layers, from slightly high level to lower level and lower level, very specific. And at the end, it's input, output, like a real input of an image that goes in the algorithm, and through the layers, it will get out and will determine this is predicted as Miss Sarah. And that is exactly what it does. It doesn't understand at all what and who Sarah is. It is just good in recognizing how it works, how to get from a picture to a particular name that's related to that. Because of course, Sarah is a particular individual with particular features that indeed can be recognized through this layered system of, and that's based on Bayesian probability calculation. Okay. Now, here is a human being. Again, I'm not going to get in detail, but the difference is, the real major difference, and this is neuroscience. And during the Corona, I was fortunate to be able to study a little bit more on this neuroscientific backgrounds. Basically, a human brain does the same thing. But the difference is, a human brain, we are born as babies with particular structure already. And we, based on a few data, can make an immediately link, not only a correlation like the computer, and that's another term that I will explain during the class of ECGL, is basically a computer doesn't understand that the picture of the previous slide is Sarah. It can see the picture, and it determines, pure based on probability calculation, that this must be by the name Sarah. But it's looking to a correlation, not a causal correlation, just a correlation. A human being wants to understand why. A computer doesn't ask that question. So we humans, we have just two pictures. Babies are very good at that. Based on a few tests, they immediately know, oh, this is mama, papa, or uncle, or whoever it is. A computer, in order to do that same thing, what I just said, recognizing papa, mama, whatever, they don't know that Papa is indeed related to them. They correlate the picture of Papa through a lot of data, and they be determining indeed as well that this person is indeed Mr. whoever it is. So that's the big difference. Data are not, and artificial is not smart. Artificial is incredibly powerful because of the processing power of computers that are now on the cloud. And because of the Internet of Things, that it is world, we can do very fast things. With big data that are trained, we call that supervised learning, which is 95% of most artificial intelligence. Now that one is something that we humans are much better to do. And let me show you Why we do things much better? This is the reason. Basically, we are flexible in our communication in a sense that we have linguistic skills. We can share information to others. A computer cannot do that. A computer just does what we tell them to do. Not only that, and here is the number two, we humans can, with the intelligence we have of a particular understanding of a particular phenomena, we basically are able to apply that in a changed environment. As Tanri was saying, what he did at telecom, he could do to an extent at Pertamina. A computer cannot. A computer will be able to do something special, meaning playing chess and beating Kasparov, and doing Go and beating Li Jing, the champion in Go. But you cannot ask these two applications to switch to either Go or chess. It's very peculiar. They don't have that plasticity that we human brains have. And of course, another one is computers have no autonomy in terms of self-reflection and consciousness. Okay, so this is the issue that neuroscientists are thinking of. They want to understand the brains of humans and leaders, but artificial intelligence scientists wants to borrow from that expertise to make computers more smart, and of course allow them to make better decisions. And that brings me to the second point of the seminar. Is what are the leadership challenges? So the first part was basically briefly explaining you what artificial intelligence can do at the moment and what the applications are, including personalized service, because it's not limited to one person. It can do so many things, and it can indeed deliver to you as long as you have an application or as long as you're involved with the system. So what are the leadership challenges? Now here is the one I said to you. There's a lot of challenges, but the challenges are, one, what can leaders do, or what leaders should do in terms of strategic thinking and seizing the future, confronted with this turbulence of digitization that we see today. Okay, that's one thing. And number two is the whole issue of what I call the bad and the ugly of AI. AI has a lot of potential, but there's issues that we need to deal with, as I will show you in a minute. Here is the hype. The hype that has been available or has been present in any technological boom. I remember the days, and a lot of you may still remember that as well, in the year 2000, 2001, when I was running this ICT company. We were dealing with a lot of tycoons in Indonesia and in Malaysia. And a lot of these people, I still remember, even people were just changing the name and putting an E in front, because internet was the new goddess. It was like everything was going to happen because of internet. Now, not everything did happen, and there was a crash in 2008. The expectations were too high in 2001, and the technology was not mature, but that was a time that Amazon and Google and all the few ones that are still there today, they were indeed starting to develop this kind of technology. The same thing we have today with this, what you see here on the curve. So smart robots and deep learning, what I just explained to you, there's an enormous hype today, right now, about these issues. But we have to be realistic. The technology is not mature that it will just fulfill the expectations that we have. Similar to blockchain, there was a lot of things about blockchain. Blockchain now is a little bit in a dip because we don't know how it will, great technology to make things more secure, but how will it be spread? Okay, and so just to be aware, same with autonomous driving cars. People, I mean, Elon Musk said that in 2018, Tesla would have their first autonomous driving car. The technology is there, and yes, the Teslas can drive by itself. But as I explained to you, the fact that it is not fully safe yet because there's so many variables that are happening in small streets, it's very functional and accurate on big lanes because there the computer can reasonably assume there will be no horses flying over or whatever objects. And so with the big data they have, millions and billions of data, kilometers they have done, the computer is very good with all the sensors in the car to say, okay, we can do this, and it does it automatically. But once you get into a small street where a lot of other things can happen, it is not safe yet. And the technology, I don't know, it may take another few years. It may even take a decade before the regulator will allow it to be completely having, is it now autonomous driving cars? Now, what I do see happen is in airports, that there you will have autonomous driving buses, because in airports it's quite straightforward. There are not many variables that need to be added. It are basically planes are standing there and a few carriages, and that the computer can easily do. And I can foresee in the next 2, 3 to 5 years that indeed you have buses will drive around in airports without drivers. That I see happening. And those who are making buses, my good friends in Magelang, they better start thinking, because that means Indonesia as well may or may not, because of other reasons, that they feel we should need people to get employed. I still remember the days, and again, that are political and policy discussions. I remember when I was working for Garuda, the issue is not just efficiency. When you talk about artificial intelligence, it's all about efficiency. Now, sometimes a business and a leader may decide, I want to have people on board, especially if you're BOM, because employment is also crucial. So these are issues that has nothing to do with AI as such, but this is to do with a broader context that leaders still need to take into account. And that brings me then to the bad and the ugly, and including, still have a little bit of time to talk about whether AI and robots will take over from humans. Okay, that's a topic I briefly want to touch upon as well. What are the bad and the ugly? Well, the bad and the uglies are those. We all have heard of the Cambridge Analytica with Facebook. We all have heard of unfair practices. We have heard of other issues. We know about the privacy issues. We know about cyber threats. Now, these are the bad things, and we should be aware of that. Privacy is a big issue, and especially as a European, and as Tanri knows, I consider myself an Asianized or an Indonesianized European, but that European aspect for me is still crucial, meaning privacy is something that we take seriously. And with data, if the companies that are having your data, including Facebook and Google, which are the most two powerful ones, and of course, by extension, and in China, Alibaba and Weibo and whoever you have, those companies, will they do the right thing? Cyber threats. All companies need to really be careful now about your core assets. Can they be stolen? I mean, if somebody walks in, I mean, I worked for Swift for a short while, which is the one that does all the banking messaging in the world, which is located in Brussels, and we were there with IBM. It's one of the most secure places on the planet. If you have a USB, you don't walk in there and don't walk out. Let me tell you, the procedures are extremely powerful. It has to be, because you need to secure data for those that you're managing. And here are some of the risk issues that you can see. But the ugly part now of potentially of artificial intelligence is that, and there's a lot of literature. There's some interesting stuff, like, for example, Zuboff at Harvard, they do an interesting study. She considers that Google and Facebook not only are very good in predicting, Google search is nothing else as artificial intelligence that is recommending particular notions. If you click in whatever it is, they determine what you will see. Now, they have a lot of data. Every time you click yes, I like, that are data that leaves a trace. Now, what's happening is, including Amazon, the wet dream of Amazon, I keep on saying that as a kind of a controversial and provocative statement. The wet dream of Amazon is this, and in my case, I like books, right? That Amazon knows your profile. because in my case, I buy online. Amazon knows before I know that there is a book coming out. They want, in fact, to be able in the future to send the book before you know that the book exists. They're so good in predicting accurately your preferences, which is completely personalized. Sending the book to you or any item, and that you're happy, and of course you deduct and you pay for it. The reason they don't do it, they have the technology already, because 85%, 90% is not bad. The problem is the 15% not accurate is for them a costly affair, because the last mile is the one that costs the most, meaning they need to bring the book to the door of the house here, isn't it? As long as it's still 15% that is not accurate, they will lose money. So once artificial intelligence gets so good to 95%, I predict that AI will be used by Amazon to, now, if they can do that, if Facebook can do that, if Google can do that, the next step is that they go on to manipulate your behavior, or potentially manipulate your behavior. Because what's in for them? Well, if they can convince the advertisements and advertisers that they can tell at beforehand that you're going to buy that product, personalized, well, advertisers will put a lot of money to Google and Facebook. 80% of all advertising today in the world, or in the Western world, is now to Google and Facebook. It's enormous. So that's the danger. That's the ugly or the dark side of AI that we should be aware of. And that's where in Congress, the question is there going to be a breakup of the big organizations, the antitrust issues? I'm not here to make a comment on that one. All I can say is AI as a leader, and if you use AI, be careful, because you need to protect your customers as well, okay? So that's an issue that I want you to be aware of. And that brings me to the issue here of singularity. Now, singularity is basically the issue by Kurzweil, who is at Google and MIT. He wrote an interesting and provocative book that the computer is going to be as intelligent as humans by 2045, which is not far from now. And Harari is talking in that sense as well. Now, here's the issue. Today, when we talk about artificial intelligence, it is what we call narrow artificial intelligence, which means either robotization or automation and augmentation of our decision-making processes through digitization under the control of humans. Today, a computer does not do anything unless we tell them to do. What Kurzweil says, with the technology developed, including today at MIT and other places in the US and Canada, that the computer will, quote unquote, understand, but then I say understand in quote unquote, emotions. They can see your face and be extracting the way you look, the way you smile, the way they will be able to extract emotions and translate that, input and output. That's all technology that's there, and it's under development as we speak. What people think of robots taking over of humans is what we call strong artificial intelligence, or general purpose artificial intelligence, which means it is evading its creator, meaning us humans, and it requires somehow a kind of self-consciousness, because otherwise it wouldn't be able to do things like we do. And there's a very famous Turing test in this kind of jargon. The Turing test is basically the famous Turing, who was the one who cracked German code in the World War, and was a mathematical wizard. Now, what he said in the late 40s, early 50s, he wrote a paper that's 70 years ago, right? He said, once a computer can fool us humans, meaning you talk to Alexa, the Google assistant, right? And if you think that Alexa is a real human being, if you cannot make the difference anymore between Alexa, a computer, or as a real being, then at that time, the computer will be seen, coded as intelligent. That's a test, although there's a lot of criticism in the literature and in the computer sciences, they have now more developed tests. The point is this: you try today with your Alexa or with Siri on your iPhone, make a joke, and you will see how it will react. It cannot deal with jokes. Why? Because the computer does not understand the context. And context, we humans are very good. Leaders, that's exactly what leaders should do. Understanding the context that is now changing and try to find new solutions. A computer today cannot do that. And who am I to make a prediction? I don't know, but I'm more pessimistic than Kurzweil. I do not think that the computer will become as intelligent as humans in the next 20 years. It may take another 100 years or even more, or maybe never. But the point is, people should not be afraid for the next 10, 20, 30 years that the computer is going to take over. Now that brings me to the next, before that, look at that slide. Now what is this? This is exactly what I'm talking about. A computer, this robot with a computer inside, is being programmed to clean up your room every day, unless Sunday, because then you sleep in. Now suppose that you were sick on Thursday, today you're sick of me talking, or Friday, and tomorrow you want to sleep in.
Okay.
The computer doesn't understand that you're sick. It doesn't see that. He's programmed to clean up, and he will just do this repetitively. Okay, so basically I will finish the presentation, and here is my last ones. Here it shows you that not all, what was it now? Artificial intelligence will replace the humans. Let me tell you this: in cashiers and maybe garment factory workers, maybe yes, robots can take over, but plumbers and house cleaners and hairstylists, these are people that always will be needed for the next 20, 30 years. And let me tell you, anything that has to do with creativity and development, meaning business leaders, will never, in my opinion, and in a lot of scientists' opinion, will not be replaced by artificial intelligence. So CEOs, boards that have to look at the future, because the future can be created. That is something that we are very good at, leaders. And we should use digitization to do so. Now, computers by itself cannot do that. That's something I just want to emphasize. And I guess my last slide is then basically looking at the issues of, yes, you can do a lot with artificial intelligence, but you need to be aware of the negative part, make sure it is responsible AI, and data governance and corporate governance, including the issues that Tanri has been talking about, is still important. That doesn't go away. In fact, it becomes even more crucial because, as I said, AI is interesting, but we should be very careful. And I'm going to just finish with these slides, just as you can read it. Because of AI, we will need leaders to understand, not necessarily technically all the details of what AI can do, but they need to understand the potential of digitization and AI. And if they ignore it, they may do that at their peril. So for me, the point is, you need to be able, as a leader of an organization, to not look inside the organization and the capabilities, something that Tanri has been emphasizing. Inside the organization, how you develop leaders that can take over and succeed those leaders. I think that's crucial. But in addition, and that's been the topic I think of the day, because of what's happening outside, the digitization, these leaders need to take that into account as well. And they need to prepare for the future by having diversity. The more diverse your team is, the more new ideas you will have. You need to have real options. Do not put all your money in one egg. Try to diversify your risk, meaning by trial and error. But you need to have small teams that are exploring what AI can do. You need to look to the weak signals of what's going on in the market. So this is just kind of a quote unquote a teaser of what we will do at ECGL. in a course like this on artificial intelligence and digitization. I'm going to put the mic back to Pa Andries, who will take questions.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Before we go into a Q&A session, we will launch the first polling. Can we do that? Yeah, we are going to have your idea about this session. And what would be, next for us?
I'll stop the sharing.
Okay. While the participants are doing the polling, I think, some takeaways from your presentation, Peter. When it comes to leadership, I think we also need to ask questions: how leaders use artificial intelligence in decision-making process? Do they really up to that level, utilizing artificial intelligence in their decision-making process? And then obviously, artificial intelligence has changed the way business operate everywhere. You mentioned about Gojek, you mentioned about Netflix, you mentioned about also Uber. And I think it will change also the way we live in the future. And also, you mentioned about, and this is quite relieving, human brains are still better than artificial intelligence. But at the same time, you also said that some jobs will be affected by artificial intelligence. And I think, you mentioned about those jobs, related to creativity will not be hampered by artificial intelligence. I'm not too sure, whether you know about Sophia. It's a humanoid. It's based in Hong Kong. And I watched a movie on YouTube where Dr. Mahathir, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, was having an interview with Sophia. And it's quite scary, to see a robot can actually do the interview.
Yes,
so
as long as we don't make jokes.
Okay, so let's go to the Q&A. We have some questions here, and I will read the first question. It's from Pa Imran. Pa Imran is from Alindo, I believe. He asked, currently almost all decision-making can be made by artificial intelligence based on big data. In terms of business strategy, which sometimes requires business intuition, how do leaders manage between the logical considerations provided by artificial intelligence with important decision-making based on existing experience, which is sometimes beyond logic? That's the questions from Imran. What's your take on that, Peter?
Okay, can I answer that first, or you want to?
Yeah, you just answer it. Yeah.
That's a very good question, and I had a slide hidden because something that I was going to do for the class. But let me explain. When we talk about decisions, one, we need to distinguish whether the decision is repetitive or unique. Meaning, if you are responsible for accounting, okay, or you're responsible for making an investment decision of $10 million, $20 million. Accounting is often repetitive.
Yeah.
In that sense, when it's very let me give a very clear example where artificial intelligence has proven to be crucial. Credit. When a bank officer provides a credit, his intuition, his feelings, emotions are involved in whether or not he gives a credit to a beautiful, nice lady or a handsome man. Either way, that's influenced, which has nothing to do with the normal 4 major criteria: where do you live, what's your income, where in your career are you, and do you have debt? What's been proven these 4 variables, very simple mathematical equation, the computer driven by, or an algorithm, which is nothing else as a mathematical equation, with this data, is doing a better job, more accurate job in predicting the accuracy, whether that person will pay back the principal and the interest, compare that to a bank officer. In other words, it's providing credits is a repetitive decision-making process. In that particular case, a computer can do a better job than a human being. However, as I said, I think it's important that the credit officer or the CEO or whoever it is still can override what the computer has said. There could be particular circumstances that you still want to provide a credit despite that the computer had said we shouldn't provide a credit to that particular person. Okay, so that's a repetitive, a repetitive decision where there's a lot of big data. So the 2 variables are, is it repetitive, is it unique, and do you have data or not? Big data. On this credit, you have a lot of data, it's repetitive. That's where the computer can do a good job. Let me then think about another one. Flying an airplane. Once the airline is in the air, it is repetitive. And that's where pilots put it on automatic pilot. However, landing and taking off is still a bit dangerous. Not because the computer doesn't know how to land and but because wind, weather, there's so many different variables that the computer still can do it quite accurately. But there, the pilot will take control. And in collaboration with the computer, the computerized plane, he will basically do a great job. So that's where you have a lot of big data, but still it's a unique, quote unquote, from a decision perspective, a unique position. That's where computers and humans should work together. Now, if indeed you have a unique decision, the $10 million investment in the future, there is no data available on that. That's where the board, and Tanri has a lot of cases which we discussed in telecom, for example. In that kind of situation, it's the board and the CEO that will need to make that decision, and a computer will not be able to be very useful because that is so unique that the computer doesn't have data to provide you really intelligent issues. So what I'm saying is that, yes, in particular instances, computers can do a better job, but only in a peculiar instance, meaning when you have big data and when it is very repetitive, okay? In all the others, like investment decisions, like negotiation, if you negotiate a deal, whether as a government official or as a business person, a computer will not be able to do so. Because there are so many unexpected instances or behavior, including the poker face, that a computer is not going to be able to do a great job compared to a human being, because we're more flexible, we understand the context, we can switch, so that's a very unique position. So in that sense, no, the computer will not be. So anything that requires creativity, contextual changes, flexibility, and we don't have a lot of data, that's where leaders are crucial and where computers will be very limited in helping them, whether in augmenting or, let's forget, automating the process. So only when you have big data, like in credits, it can be automated. In particular instances, like in a pilot case, you augment the decision power of the pilot. But in a lot of other cases, it is the leader without AI, because AI cannot do anything. Okay.
Thank you. The second question comes from Yusron. Pak Yusron is also from Pelindo, is the Indonesian Port Authority. He asked, I'm very interested in your presentation that artificial intelligence is widely used in business applications. The question is how the legal system will keep up with the development of technology. Who will be responsible to the damages caused by artificial intelligence when a company big data leak out from the system and will be endangering the company, developer, users, or whoever impacted by that? And currently, there is no prevailing rules which are able to overcome those problems. So I think this is one of the issues that the leaders should take into account. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, very timely and a good question. It's a little bit difficult to answer. Let me put it this way, and again, if Tanri has some comments to make on that one because he has a lot of experience in it. Look at Facebook. Facebook may not have done anything illegal, okay? But what they forgot, and more particularly the CEO and COO, Sandberg and Zuckerberg, they forgot that Facebook is thriving on trust. Trust by the users. The 2 billion people using Facebook?
Yeah.
If people are starting to lose trust that Facebook, willingly or not, data leaks, right? That was the question. If that's happening, their reputation is at stake. And when we talk about reputation, then it is not anymore just the legal officer or the compliance and ethics officer that's responsible, because that is done too late. Then it is the function of the chairman or the chair and the CEO to take control. So in the case of Facebook, rightfully, it is Zuckerberg that is responsible and should do something. Similar to Google. And so the ugly part is, once you get in that situation where you get a crisis, as in any governance situation, it is the CEO and the chair that needs to get to the front. And in worst scenario, it is the chair who leads the board, who has the ultimate power given by the shareholders to take decisions. And so when you indeed have data links, then there's no doubt in my mind, do not just let the legal officer talk. Make sure that the board, or at least the CEO, is up front. And the example, and I'm not going to explain in detail, but just Google it. The most famous example of that was nothing to do with artificial intelligence, but with reputation issues, is the famous Johnson & Johnson Tylenol case that happened in 83, 84 in the US. And it's the CEO, it's almost like crisis management. And so that is nothing to do with AI anymore. AI, unfortunately, because of whoever took advantage, then it becomes a pure business deal and a crisis, and then it's pure crisis management. And that's the example of Johnson & Johnson with the CEO to control and communicate it. And a stock of CEO of Johnson & Johnson dived while they were trying to get out the Tylenol case. But because of the fact that he did the right thing ethically, he regained basically the trust of their customers. And after about 9 months, the stock price was back to the normal thing. So crisis management is then basically what every CEO knows how to do.
All right, thank you. So the third question comes from Ubun Ontario. He works for PTP N3, which is like the government plantation. He asked, big data revolution is the momentum for young people as leaders, because there are creativity and innovation as a component of it. Is it true?
I thought it was a rhetorical question, but yes, it is true. But, the big but again, you cannot, obviously, young people who are digital savvy, AI savvy, can really come up with great ideas, like the Gojek, the Tokopedias in this world. But you still have big organizations in Indonesia and in the world that you cannot just replace. A telecommunication company still needs to handle the pillars of 5G, 4G, whatever it is. AI may have, but you still need leadership, you still need organization, institutions that will do the job. You don't change the president with an AI robot. Meaning what I'm saying is, I may have given the feeling that a lot of young people will have a future, and definitely anybody who's doing data science and computer science and AI will have a job in the future because there's an enormous demand. if you look to the jobs created in just 10 years, it's incredible. And some jobs will be lost. But that doesn't mean that the rest will just disappear. What I'm really saying is that incumbents, meaning organizations that are existing today, will need to wake up. Walmart, a big example. How do they deal with it? Well, Walmart has how many? 2 million people working for them, right? Yeah. Now, it took them a while, but today Walmart in their supply chain is using indeed AI in order to compete with Amazon, because if they don't do it, they will disappear. So what I'm really saying is, any organization that thinks, oh, forget digitization, that's for the youngsters, be careful, because you may wake up one day and your business is gone. So yes, the future is for the youth in the sense that they will indeed be able to do things because of the personalized power they have now. But that doesn't mean that the big ones will disappear. So I think will be more a hybrid for where the big ones will adapt. And they, listen, Google and Facebook and Apple and just the big ones, and the same in Asia, they have the money to get the best brilliant people. My worry is different. My worry is that big organizations may be too slow to react. And number two, once they start reacting, it's too late, or the most bright ones of the youngsters are already working for the Tokopedias, the Labadas, the Gojeks, the Grabs of this world. And we see that the same thing in business schools. We, as we do right now with digitization, how are we going to work with this coronavirus as long as there's no vaccine? But even if there's a vaccine, how will universities adapt to this new and changed reality? They will need to think about it. And so I'm saying, yes, the youth has a great, brilliant future, but do not write off the big ones yet. And the big ones should be careful not to get too complacent. And there is turbulence coming, and we better do something about it. We, meaning the old folks and the ones who are responsible in leadership positions with big organizations. You cannot just let go. You need to wake up.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just want to share something. Yeah, the trend for youngsters now, I mean, like if they got two job offers, one from a solid big company and one from startups, I mean, most likely they will choose the startups because more flexibility in terms of working hours, more innovation, more creativity involved, in their jobs. So I guess that will be the trend in the future.
Just one thing, that's true, but then again, you have to look to the personalities. Some people are more risk takers than others, because it is not always true that those small companies will pay better, especially the small ones. Yeah, you're better off if you're a banker, you can either go for a fintech, but if you work in Mandiri, you get the highest nice salary with all the perks, and some people will prefer that stable job. So meaning, yes, you're right, but it also has to do, are you somebody who is willing to take risks if you're young, or you prefer a stable, secure environment? And this is also psychologically, you have to take it to go. I've seen people, when I was as an entrepreneur and when I was running the company, I wanted to have people who were willing to take risks with me. I was willing to give them equity. And people say, no, thank you. We rather have a nice salary and let the boss take this risk. So yes, you're right. But not all youth are willing to take the risk.
All right. Okay. This next question coming from Marco Gatsticker. He's your student at the University of Antwerp.
Okay.
He asked, artificial intelligence heavily impacts the management of businesses in the sense that in order to make AI work for your business, a lot of business processes will need to be adjusted accordingly. Okay, he's talking about business process. Are you afraid that by blindly focusing on AI and working for AI, we humans might lose our competitive advantage being flexible, contextual thinkers? To that matter, might the mere existence of AI negatively impact the way we will look at leadership in the future?
Okay. I'm a simple man. At the end of the day, to me, it's about what do you offer your customer? What is it that the customer wants? And remember, what we're trying to do with this small seminar is talking about the personalized services. It is true that in the back office of Netflix and Grojek, and you just name all these organizations, there's a lot of things going on. And a lot of business processes, yeah, that's true. But you may have the best technology. If you don't, you can even over invest in features. But if that's not what the customer wants, then you're not going to win the battle. So at the end of the day, I think the ones who really make the difference, the leaders that will make the difference, are those that have an understanding of AI and what the technology and the digitization can do. But you still need to look at what is it? What is your value proposition? What is it that you're offering your customers? Uber was only possible to thrive because it was convenient. You didn't have to wait in New York anymore, the yellow taxis, because you just had an app. It was faster and more convenient and cheaper. Same with Airbnb. Same with Amazon. So the thing is that strategically, having the best AI experts in-house does not guarantee that you will win the battle. You still need to translate that into a product that makes sense and is affordable. Right? So I'm not sure whether I fully answered the question, but I still remember the time that I was working at IBM and that we did do a business process engineering, which was basically making processes more effective and efficient and automating that. That's exactly what AI does 20, 30 years later. But at the end of the day, as long as the output, the service and the value proposition is not what the customer wants, you can have all the AI put on the system, it's not making the big difference. But if you have indeed a system that provides the service that the customer is willing to pay a price for, like Netflix, $10 a week, a month, and have all these movies anytime you want, now that's a value proposition that is worth it and not being bothered by television ads and all that. So it's all about, at the end of the day, what is it that you offer the customer at an affordable or at the price that he's willing to pay for?
Okay, so you're saying that it has to be human-centered at the end of the day.
You don't sell to computers, do you?
No?
Meaning you use computers, AI, to sell to humans. So
Right.
yes, you are at the end dealing with humans. We still are on a planet where humans are buying and paying for a service or a product. So yes, of course, it is at the end of the day still business as usual, but with other tools.
Okay. So the next question is coming from Heri Prabowo. He's also working for PTPN, that's the government's plantation company. Is there any company here in Indonesia, as far as you know, who had been integrating AI in their strategic company decision?
Well, the ones I've been referring to, obviously, the Tokopedias of this world, those young companies, those companies that are doing nothing but, let's say, using AI. Now, let me give you an example which is very different. I have a friend who is the CEO of a Robot Vision is the company's name, so you can Google it. And he's using this algorithm as recognizing cats. So you have all these pictures, and he trained the system such that it recognizes a particular cat or whatever it was. Now, he's using to sell that software to a Dutch company that is exporting tulips. Why? Because the computer doesn't understand the difference between a cat and a tulip. What it does is it's recognizing particular tulips that are good enough to be sold. And so the system is very fast to recognize with data these tulips that are sorted automatically by the computer. I've seen in agriculture robotization with AI behind, where it basically automatically looks at harvesting for particular products. Moreover, with the drones, now drones have AI in their device that is looking at the water usage by the plants needed in particular big areas in order to let the plants grow faster and more effective, and whether there's enough fertilization. So basically AI from above, the drones with AI from above is looking at those agricultural terrains and that you couldn't do before, and is looking particularly where there are problems and can interfere. So there's a lot of applications that are possible in whether it's agriculture or in any kind of business. And if you have these devices, which are not necessarily that expensive, you have most likely a competitive advantage. Not always, but it will allow you to become more effective and efficient, and that has a potential effect on the pricing of your products. Is Andries still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Okay. I think we are getting into the prayer time. It's about 5:45 now. So is Pak Tanri still around?
Yeah, I'm here.
Pak Tanri, do you have any final thoughts? Based on what?
Yeah, I think I must appreciate those who participate, particularly those who are from the state-owned enterprises. Para BUMN-nya di sini ada Lindo 1 sama PTPN 3 ya, which is now the holding. Now, I think what is very important now that we try to understand what artificial intelligence is, what are the risks. But one thing we have to understand, as Peter pointed out, that there are decisions that does not require what we call judgment. It's repetitive. That can be done by a computer. But don't forget, when you are at the leadership position, you are no longer dealing with routinism than repetitive condition. You are there to make judgment. Business is about judgment. And judgment cannot be, to my understanding, solved by this computer. As Peter says, computer's power, but leaders is more powerful, superior power. That is why we cannot escape from building a team of leaders. Now, when I talk about leaders actually is the process of building the skill. And the skill is developed through experience. And therefore, over time, a leader will develop his capacity to become a wise man. Leadership at the top is basically wisdom. And you cannot get it from the computer. Now, that is why, as a leader, I pointed out before, he's just going to be as good as the people he chooses, he develops, and empowering, including the ability of the leader to set up, to develop a teamwork. Computer is just one, but when you are developing a team, which we call leadership team, you are far more superior than the computer. And that computer cannot do. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is it's been very good to have the perspective given by Peter with examples and everything. And I think it's very clear. Computer, artificial intelligence has a limitation, but they are a great tools for the leaders to be able to get the information to make judgment. Yeah, don't forget, leaders make judgment. If you don't have to make judgment, you don't need to be a leader. If you are just running a repetitive work, you should not be just top leader. You should be just a simple manager, you know, to process. But what we are talking about here is basically the very scare of leaders. We have a tremendous scarcity in leadership. So, or basically in leader. And therefore, I think what we are learning today, this afternoon, is a great thing. It opens our mind that as a leader, you cannot be alone. You got to use this technology, but you cannot totally rely on technology because businesses are judged. Businesses require decisions. Without decision, there is no business. But decision require judgment, and judgment require experience, skill, and wisdom. And on top of that, leaders must be able to develop a teamwork because no individual is perfect, let alone the machine. But a team can be near to perfect. Jadi tim itu bisa mendekati kesempurnaan. So as a leader, your task number one is to develop teamwork. When I established the Ministry of State and Enterprise, waktu membentuk kementerian, yang pertama saya lakukan, mencari orang-orang terbaik, lalu saya membangun tim. And then I don't have to work hard because there are team working behind me under my leadership. Jadi kembali saya kira ini menarik sekali, very, very interesting. Of course, in a couple of hours, Peter cannot actually really go through details in which the application of both the artificial intelligence and leadership and the risk can be done. I think I asked Andries to set up maybe a special, I would say, program. At the ECGL, usually we do 2.5 days for this kind of what we call program. And I think we can now combine the technology, the advent of technology along the line with the changes in the business environment, because I agree, Peter also says that basically business is customer. If you don't have customer, you don't have any business. So therefore, you have to understand your customer and you have to satisfy the need of your customer. Artificial intelligence can be very useful, but still it requires leadership judgment. Jadi dua-duanya masih diperlukan, dan oleh karenanya juga leaders should never stop learning, should never stop develop their ability to make a better judgment and to make the right decision. Itu yang menurut saya bisa kita jadikan sebagai patokan. Okay, Andries.
But when it comes to my final question, Pak,
when it comes to managing the nation, Pak Tanri, how do you see the future of artificial intelligence in public sector?
Well, you know, government actually makes policy, right? Kebijakan. Government should not be doing the what we call the technical thing. Kalau kita bicara government, kita bicara leadership. And there's so much complexity in a nation. You have to look at the economy, you have to look at the human capital development, you have to look at the dynamics of the politics. There's so much. Definitely artificial intelligence will be very useful because you work on the basis of a big data, arithmetic formulation to come up with some kind of trendy, kan? But still you gotta have a great leader to manage all of this complex social, political, and economic environment. Itu negara harus ke sana. Okay.
Pak Andries, can I add?
Hello.
Andries siapa? Go ahead. Ya, siapa tuh?
Pak Andries, Pak Hamzah ya.
Pak Hamzah.
Oh, ya.
The first thing is, Pak Tanri, I think it's good to read the Surveillance Capitalism, the book that was shown earlier. It's a compulsory reading for all of our people on surveillance capitalism. It's a complex book, but it's a very important book. Number two is on public sector. I think governments sometimes make wrong policy choices because they don't have data. So big data will help them to make the right policy choices. Even in COVID-19, government has to make many policies, and some of policies are made based on hunch, based on political consideration, but there is not big data to support some of the policies. So policy choices become more complex. So number three is that in the banking sector, which I'm in, and in the board of bank, we make sure that all our boards are digitally literate, because at the end of the day, the board has to make decision involving data, cybersecurity, surveillance, and all these and most of the software that are coming in embedded AI inside the software, like anti-money launderings and all those things. So it is an inevitable process. So when you say leaders, I also like to see that this commissioners level at the board should have good digital understanding, because they can be a barrier to change. So that's a bit of my adding a few.
That's good. Let me just add here. Actually, Dr. Hamzah is of course Malaysian, but is actually very active in consulting for the government. Was a member of former government. I think was still Pak Najib, member of his team. But Dr. Hamzah also is a facilitator or lecturer like Peter at Executive Center for Global Leadership of ECGL. So actually, if the three of us can put a 2.5 days forum or seminar, I think we can certify those participants who will definitely be in a very good sort of potential leader for in future of Indonesia. Terima kasih Pak Hamzah, you are participating.
Yes,
you have the master, so I can't even recognize you.
It's the new normal.
It's the new normal. Okay, so that's great. We have Peter here, who is a lecturer or facilitator at ECGL. Dr. Hamzah is also facilitator for ECGL, and I'm grateful to have this particular forum.
Okay. Thank you, Pak. Thank you. Peter, any final thoughts before we conclude?
The thing, I think Pak Tanri summarized it very well. So at the end of the day, you don't have a business without customers. And the same thing goes for governments. You don't have a government when the citizens do not trust you. And trust is the crucial issue. And the whole AI issue, which we developed or which we had spoken of, is nothing but a tool that allows you to make better decisions. But in quite a number of decisions, as Pak Tanri clearly said, it's judgment that is based on experience and based on, and this is crucial, we humans learn so good, much better than any computer, that we, like in the beautiful song of John Lennon, can say, imagine that you can do this.
Imagine
and
there's no
that the computer can never do. And so whether you are in government or you're the board, you are responsible for your organization and the investment of it to create a future so that your competitive advantage can be sustained or created, and that a computer can never do. Computers here are helping to provide tools to automate, to augment decisions, but at the end of the day, it's a human who makes a judgment because he or she understands the causal relationship of the decision made today that will have an effect in the future. A computer doesn't understand that. It just do correlation, pattern seeking in data, and does it very well. I repeat, artificial intelligence even the ones who are learning are dumb machines on steroids. A human has the imagination and the creativity to do something beyond what any computer can never do. And so judgment and decision-making and creating the trust, whether it's government, a government institution or business, that's at the end, because we are social animals. Remember, that's exactly what Charles Darwin said. We survive not because we are that intelligent, but because we know how to adapt to change. And I think that's what these leaders should do, make the judgment and be wise. Wise meaning be aware of the ugly and the dark side of AI and data. Not just the good things, but the bad things. And wisdom has to do with balancing that. I think that's important for those who, even the youngsters. Youngsters may be very, savvy in technology. They know the implications and the consequences. Think about Zuckerberg. Does he understand the consequences of it? And so that's, for me as a risk guy, of course, important that we see, okay, what are the consequences of what we make? So I thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Tanri, thank you, Anza. And I hope that this will be indeed an opportunity for ECGL to develop some more models on these issues that are crucial. Making good leaders who know how to make wise decisions.
Right. Thank you very much. After all, we are the ultimate creation of the Almighty. Thank you, Pak Peter. Thank you, Pak Tanri. Thank you juga Dr. Hamzah. Dan thank you, Bapak-Bapak. Terima kasih, Bapak-Bapak dan Ibu yang sudah mengikuti sesi webinar ini dari awal sampai akhir. Kami akan upload videonya di YouTube. Dan nanti kita akan share linknya supaya Bapak Ibu juga bisa, yang belum kesempatan untuk mendengarkan, bisa mendapatkan pencerahan juga. Sekali lagi, kami dari Executive Center for Global Leadership mengucapkan terima kasih atas perhatian Bapak Ibu, dan kami ucapkan juga selamat have a safe weekend, stay home, dan stay safe, stay healthy. Oke, terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Pak.
Oke.
Terima kasih, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Tanri.
Oke, Peter.
Thank you, Pak Tanri.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Pak Tanri.
Thank you, Tanri. Thank you, Pak Hamzah. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm signing out.
Very good.